Hey y'all, it's Candace with Slusher Home Care Consulting. Today we're talking about Tough Conversations Part 2, clients. Last month we discussed talking about caregivers and your staff and having to have hard conversations with them and how you really can't avoid it in order to run your business. And those hard conversations with clients are also going to come up, and you really can't avoid it if you want to run a good, solid business. You certainly never want to lose a client over some disappointing news or something that they don't want to hear, but you have the integrity of your business, um, and their best interest in mind, and also most of the time an obligation to the state to oversee their well-being and do the right thing. So sometimes that can lead to tough stuff. So let's just get into that. I mean, there's a few categories. The first one is just disappointing news. You don't want to have to give disappointing news. It's no fun, but it's not the end of the world. It might be financial, like maybe, you gave them a range of quote before you went out there. And when you get out there, you see the complexities of the situation. You actually have to charge the highest rate. And they didn't want to hear that. Or they want 24-hour care and they only want 4 caregivers in and out of the house all week long, and that means they're going to have to pay for overtime, right? Or some situation like that. It could just be financial. Hopefully, some of the other connections that you've made with them will help overcome that. It could be that they really love this caregiver, and this caregiver is just turned out to be a really bad employee. Maybe they're late all the time, or they don't clock in and out, or there's some other reason. Could be 1,000 reasons, but you're not going to be able to keep them on your service anymore. And the last thing you want to do is lose a client because you got rid of their caregiver, even if it's the best thing for them. Maybe they really stress out because you have to replace that caregiver once a week because of frequent call-ins. But you can't allow your agency and, again, your business integrity to be held hostage by a client who's just attached to a caregiver when there's other perfectly good people out there that won't cause them as much stress. And so there's a few different ways to have that conversation, but you can't just keep it to yourself. You may be able to say, but if you look back on the calendar, the last month we've had to send strangers 4 different times, and every time we do, you're unhappy and you're stressed out about having somebody new, and this is because this caregiver is just not able to meet your needs anymore. Speaking of needs, sometimes how you have those, maybe a family member that's very demanding. Sometimes the whole family is very demanding, but it's usually just one that really sticks out. And a conversation you might need to have is, we can meet your needs, but we cannot meet your expectations. Everything that your mother needs is being done by our care staff within our care plan, within our scope of care. But some of those additional requests and expectations, we're just not going to be able to do. And that's also a tough conversation because you want to give them everything and make them happy. But there's usually lots of reasons why you can't, right? We'll do light housekeeping, but we're not going to get on the ladder and dust the fan every week or ever because we don't get on ladders, and that's a safety concern, and you'll need to hire a housekeeping service for that. Of course, that's just one example of 100, and if you're in business, you already know about those examples. But we can meet your needs, but not your expectations. Sometimes that's soft enough to get you through that situation. Sometimes it's an embarrassing situation, something that your caregiver did. It could just be a simple mistake, or it might even be theft or exploitation that you have to call the family and tell them. Now, ideally, it's better if you call the family and tell them than for the family to call you and tell you what happened. Either way, uncomfortable. So just acknowledging that, but you got to put your ownership pants on and go do it anyway. Then there's those hard conversations, but vital things you just really do have to talk about. The first one that comes to mind for me is safety. So, for instance, if you have a client who has had 2 or 3 falls in the last couple of weeks overnight, and they might have a shift all day long, but they don't have night shifts, maybe they can't afford it. Maybe they're not able to afford 24/7 monitoring, but that's really what this person needs now. And it could be temporary. It could be that they need, a hospitalization or a rehabilitation stay, or perhaps just doing 24 hours for a couple of weeks while he gets physical therapy and gets stronger. There might be a light at the end of that tunnel for them, but it's very expensive to do 24-hour care. And safety is going to have to come paramount over cost every time. You have to meet that person's needs regardless of the cost, but they still have to pay for it if it's private pay, right? Or maybe they have insurance that only hits so much. Maybe they have a long-term care insurance plan that pays for 5 hours a day, but they really need 12 hours a day now. There's this and this, these different safety issues that you could cite in that conversation. So you just don't want to skip it. You can't let it go. If it's nagging at you, if it's keeping you up at night, then you need to go ahead and just have that conversation. The other one might be neglect or even abuse. If your staff is noticed neglect or abusive situations, or if you've had the conversation several times now with the family, but your dad keeps falling at night, he's not safe. If you can't add night shifts, it's time to look at moving him to a facility. Or maybe there is a abuse situation from the client to the caregiver, and you have to talk about client behaviors, combativeness, aggressive behaviors, and safety of your own staff, that you're not able to continue to staff them. Of course, you could always quit the client if you have to, but there might be other measures that you could take. Like perhaps they really wanted a female caregiver, but the client is sexually inappropriate. And if you send a male caregiver, he doesn't act inappropriate. And so you want to send a male caregiver, and that's just not what they want, Lots of those uncomfortable things. And then, of course, having to discover that maybe there was abuse or neglect by your own staff, that you have to self-report to the state if you're licensed, or to go and just have that really hard conversation with the family that we discovered in our investigation that this is what happened. And there could be a liability situation. You may have to call your attorney. You may have to call your insurance company and file a claim. But it still comes down to doing the right thing and taking care of your clients. And then the last thing that is hard but vital is end-of-life conversations. And it could be that our staff walked in this morning and found your father unresponsive, and they called 911, and he was pronounced, dead, expired, passed away, however you want to say it, right there on the scene. It could be that there was a hard fall or some sort of incident that then led to a more devastating result. It might even be that you as a professional, and not everyone is going to be comfortable with this, but say if you're a nurse or you have a lot of expertise in life-limiting illnesses, it might be that you need to make the recommendation to the family that it might be time to talk about hospice. Has your family ever thought about hospice? Has your doctor brought it up? These are the things that hospice could provide to your family during this time. But this particular diagnosis is a life-limiting illness. And I have found in my career many, many times that either the doctors just don't step up and say anything until it's really urgent. Sometimes that's an ego issue, but families are often not educated about what the whole picture of a disease process looks like. And certainly if you're not comfortable, you may want to call on a social worker, or even put a call out to the doctor's office to say, we're seeing this and this and this, and we're requesting that you have that conversation with the family. But if there's any other kind of support, like a home health, perhaps you could ask them to send the social worker out to have that conversation. But if you're comfortable, if you have enough knowledge about it, it might be you that just says, I think it's time. This has been my experience with hospice, or this is what I know about them, or here's some resources where you could start to talk to someone about that. It's a tough time for the family. So you never want to be the bearer of bad news, but it happens. It's just part of the deal. We're so involved in our clients' lives. We go to church with them, we pray with them, we see them in their most vulnerable moments, we shower them, and it can be such an intimate relationship. But it seems like the respectful and right thing to do sometimes, to just sit them down and say the hard stuff. So I appreciate you for all that you do. And I'll see you next month on the next video. Thank you.